This one opening has brought me more than 500 ELO points. It's easy to start playing and incredibly powerful. You can play it against absolutely everything your opponent plays, even something weird as knight f3 and knight d3, but knight c3, there is a good chance that this is going to transpose actually to the main line of the Philidor defense. He just needs to play e5. Okay, he takes, which is also possible. They can take on e5 in all possible situations. So we play this Philidor defense starting with the move d6, or the universal defense d6 against anything. And yeah, this setup is also fine, absolutely no problems for us if we play this move c6. Please remember it. So I started to play this opening where I was 1900 ELO many years ago. Now I'm 2420 international master federated player, 2700 on chess.com and Blitz, and all of that happened while I have played this defense as black. And it's so easy, especially if you play under 2000 ELO. Your opponent doesn't have any idea how to react, and so you're gonna get a huge advantage. You're gonna save a lot of time because you're gonna play it every single time, so you have experience. And it's not about memorizing moves. I can, like, in this particular case, my opponent gives me this choice. I can even go somewhere there, but I don't need to. Let's imagine I play bishop e7 and then he takes on e5. This bishop is great on e7, dealing with the pin. I'm gonna just castle, and you need to understand those ideas. It's gonna be so efficient. You just completely forget the opening headache once and forever, at least for many, many years to come. So my plan here is to defend this pawn, and afterwards this knight is free to go to c5, where it's going to be so great, putting a lot of pressure on the center pawn. First of all, never forget about the development. Once your king is secured, now you're free to go, free to do whatever you want to do. And this knight c5 idea is very powerful, just as attacking on the queen side. Please remember, in the Philidor defense and all of these setups, this queen side attack is normally what you should do. But before you play knight c5, always make sure to cover this b4 idea. Maybe in this particular case, I'm gonna attack that pawn, so my opponent needs to do something about that. So he cannot immediately play the move b4. Although maybe even here he has like takes, and then he's going to be able to play b4. But then I'm gonna have knight e6 followed up by knight d4 and knight f4, so that's not a problem. You notice that my opponent, by the way, very strong player, 2400 rated, he's playing everything very logical to the center, but doesn't get any advantage as white. Maybe he doesn't realize it yet, but we are gonna outplay him here, hopefully. I mean, I might be wrong, but let's see how we use the ideas of this powerful opening to outplay my opponent. It's not like I memorized all of the theory here, because there are so many different things our opponent can do, yet we play this setup and it works against everything. And because we understand those ideas that we need to attack here, we know what to do, so we don't waste any time. Knight c5, let's say takes, maybe queen d6 is his idea. But that's just exchanging the queens in a situation where I don't have any weaknesses at all, and I have two bishops advantage. So I'm not afraid of that at all. The main thing is, of course, my king is safe. The reason you might be wondering why he didn't play bishop c4 is, in that case, you play this move b5 with the tempo. So maybe my opponent said, well, let me develop it to e2, at least it's not gonna get attacked. If he does that, however, then you always have this idea b5 in mind. Yes, indeed, seems like that's exactly what my opponent is doing, at least to take on f6 to save that pawn on e4. But now, yeah, I have a pair of bishops. If he gives me time, I'm gonna just develop all of my stuff, and he's gonna get a lot of troubles. He does go for it. I don't know, maybe it was better to still play a5 and then play knight c5 next move, but I actually was fine with this line as well, as I have forced my opponents to take that guy. So I now have a bishop's advantage, bishop's pair advantage, and I'm gonna illustrate you how to use that to win the game. When you have two bishops, you want to open up the position as much as possible. That is why I like this move knight to d4. By the way, queen d6 was not the choice my opponent decided to play. I can start with the b5, by the way, because if he takes, I'm going to have two bishops against two knights. This bishop is tremendously good, and if he goes back, then at least I win space and time. But also knight d4 is so tempting. Yeah, let's start with the move b5. because I want to illustrate this plan. It's almost always working. If he plays a5, then yeah, you play a5 yourself and knight c5, but if he doesn't, then b5 is almost always an idea of yours. One thing that I'm thinking now, maybe I should be a little bit careful with knight d4, because he can take and then play knight d2, and then this pawn might be vulnerable. Although I can still protect it with rook to d8, but he has maybe this idea to play f4 and e5, so you have to be a little bit careful, always think about your opponent's opportunities. Chess is a tough game in the end of the day, but this opening makes it so easier for you. I mean, once I have started to play it, my entire life changed so much. I was just happy to play it because I don't need to memorize those lines. I can just get fun playing. Of course, when I play on my level now in the tournament games, it's getting more complicated because people specifically prepare against this line and nobody wants to play against the computer. But if I play online, if I play rapid chess and blitz chess, when my opponent specifically doesn't prepare against me, then I'm so happy to play it. Okay, so one idea is always to play this move a5. But maybe in this case, it does not bring me much. He can just play a3 anyway. Knight d4. Maybe I prepare it with the move rook to d8, so that I have more control there, and then I play knight d4. I do want to play a5 first. It's very convenient always to like create additional hook. So maybe if he plays a3 at the important points, I would be able to take it, or maybe create a threat over here. Like you have more opportunities like that. I like that. For example, this move bishop to e7 is actually pretty annoying for him. Maybe knight e2 is his idea. By the way, knight f4, like knight d4 is one opportunity, but knight f4 is also another one, because if I play bishop f4, g4, sorry, and then exchange it, then the skin is going to be completely naked, and that would be horrible for him. If he plays knight to e2 immediately, how do I react to that? Still bishop g4, knight takes, bishop takes f3, and then I take in the end, and again the skin is naked, but maybe it's not such a big problem. And play king h1 and rook g1. I feel like, first of all, I haven't got any troubles at all after the opening. This is already a huge achievement if you're playing as black, but I feel this is kind of a critical moment for me to figure out what is the best way to continue. Maybe queen b6 is useful, because I control those squares. The d4 square one more time, of course. On the other hand, I'm not going to be able to control the diagonal anymore. Not sure how important that is. One thing I don't want to point out, you never ever want to touch this c6 pawn. This is like the main thing to make sure that this knight never comes to d5, because that would be a disaster, even here. Let's play rook d8. I feel like this is the most active move, and this is also the most logical move to make. I can bring a new piece into the game with a tempo, attacking my opponent's queen, and now he has to decide where he goes. Because every move has some drawbacks. If he goes to e3, then after knight d4, he cannot take it because of this fork. But if he goes to e2, that's even worse, because I'm going to attack him with the tempo again. So that is why he goes here. This way he can still take and then still play knight to e2, but the queen is pretty passive there. That has to be an achievement for me. Knight e4, takes, knight to e2. How do I continue from there? Feels pretty active, but if I give my opponent too much time, he's gonna play f4, e5, and that... By the way, still that would be risky for him, because I do have a pair of bishops. But at least he's gonna have some counterplay. Okay, let's go for it, because I feel that's the most active thing for me. And generally, I always advise you to play as actively as possible. Maybe I'm gonna have a4 and bishop e6 idea to exchange those bishops, but then to get another pawn in the center and support those pawns might be a very interesting idea. because strategically I'm doing very good here. Just need to stop that plan from my opponents, and otherwise I'm very good to go. So what I want to play is a4, the only move is bishop a2, and then bishop a6, threatening to take. Let's go for it. Again, you see, simple chat. I'm not doing anything fancy here. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm not saying that this opening, like you play it and you win in 5 moves or 10 moves or something. It's not about opening traps. It's about this solid opening that you can play against anything, that doesn't require that much memorization compared to any mainstream openings. You can also get a lot of fun, and you have a lot of advantages in terms of the experience and saving time. So I feel this is very cool. It helped me so much in my chess career, and I hope you're gonna give it a try and see it for yourself. So now I want to play e5. Even if he plays f4, I still play e5, and I kind of limit this knight a lot. And then the situation changes a lot, because actually the c5 move becomes my main idea. Remember, I say it's never touch it because of this knight. It comes to d5, is a devastating effect. It attacks the b5 pawn. But now that I have got rid of this knight, the c5 becomes a very interesting idea, because that allows me to create those problems for him on the queen side. How do you figure out where to play and how to play in the middle game? How do you understand what is the right middle game plan? Well, you try to understand where you are stronger, because ideally you always want to play on the side of the board where you're stronger. In this case, that would be this side of the board. First, I have more pawns here. I have 4 against 3. And second, I have more pieces here. And third, my opponent has here weaknesses. So that's what I want to attack. Where I want to attack and where I want to play. But I am very surprised with the decision of my opponent to take, because generally the bishop is stronger than the knight if the position is opened, and he is voluntarily opening up the position. Yet I understand he's doing that, trying to at least create some threats, get some counterplay over here, attack my king. So that makes some sense, but I'm not sure he can be successful with that, because again, my move c5, my bishop on e5 is beautiful. It's like controlling all of the squares against this knight, and in general stops this pawn, helps in the defense, and that gives me this time and opportunity to attack. Remember, to play on the side of the board where I am stronger. That would be a mistake to play on this side of the board where my opponent is so much more powerful. Yeah, now I understand one drawback. I played c5, but my opponent's knight does come to d5 if I allow that. That might be pretty annoying. So let's try to calculate some variations here. Obviously, I can take, and that would solve the problem, but that would go into the endgame. Although the endgame is pretty much winning for me. If he takes with the queen, I take it there, and I'm gonna create this passer, protected passer. This weakness is huge. So I feel that is great. And if he takes with the rook, I think the same thing. I can use my queen then. So it's important to limit your opponent's counterplay as much as possible. You don't want to spoil your great position by giving your opponent's counterplay. So always be careful with your opponent's counterplay. Look, like every single move, ask yourself, what kind of ideas my opponent has? I call it a wow system. What opponent wants? It's crucial to always think about that, because this is the #1 mistake that people under 2000 are making, and I notice it so much when I analyze our Academy's members games. By the way, you always get this opportunity to get personalized feedback from me if you subscribe to the Academy, and I noticed that pretty much everyone is not thinking enough in terms of what the opponent wants to do. I'm not sure if I want to play ace3 immediately, because right now this pawn is very well protected, and in the right moment, of course, I'm gonna push it, but I'm not sure if that right moment is already came. Maybe it has. Ace3, because I'm very direct. Rook f5, for example, a2, rook to a1, and just rook c8 attacking that guy. I think this is close to winning. Let me play ace3. Because of the c2 pawn, it would almost always be impossible for my opponent to attack that a2 pawn twice, right? Because you cannot do that. And if he's going to be passive, then I'm gonna just destroy him. I'm gonna just come and use those weaknesses to my advantage. So the idea I have here is pretty funny. I'm threatening a1, so he has to play rook a1 now. Then I want to play rook c8, attacking that pawn. I basically want to take it, play rook b2, and rook b1 check. Hopefully you can follow this straightforward variation. If, however, he plays rook c5 and blocks me, then I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna push all of my pawns and still destroy him. So hopefully this is gonna happen now. I'm threatening to take a pawn. You cannot allow that. Like, this pawn is not good enough. I'm gonna take there, I'm gonna threaten here. This pawn is coming. This is just game over. So I expect him to play rook c5. Then I'm gonna take it and immediately play d3. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, because then I think I get this double connected passers, b4, b3, b2, and I'm just promoting and win the game. But this way, maybe one idea he has is rook a5, but I'm still way too fast. Okay, rook a5, he tries to come back there and defend this way. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a way to relocate my rook immediately to the second rank. Although, why not still? Maybe rook f2 is his idea? Even that doesn't really help. Let me play the move rook to a4, or maybe rook a3 is better, in case he wants to go back to b5. If he plays rook f2, I have d3. He cannot take it. I love rook endgames, especially when I'm so active, but I don't want to spoil it. Remember, it's never ever too late to spoil your position, so you want to be careful, you want to calculate those lines, you want to calculate the opportunities for your opponent. So my idea is to play rook a3 with an idea to play rook to b3 and eventually rook to b1 or rook to b2, because when you have one rook on the second rank, it's great, but if you have two of them, this is just a nightmare for your opponent. And if he plays rook to f2, then I want to play d3, protecting my rook, and still continuing my idea. Although now I notice a problem. Once I'm gonna play rook b3, he's going to be able to take that pawn, at least in some variations. Okay, then maybe indeed let's play rook a4, so that I also, in the process of that idea, I take this b4 pawn. And if he plays back, then basically he wastes time with his idea, and then I play rook a3 and continue my plan. Or just rook b2, by the way. That idea never escaped. Very, very powerful. Yes, rook b5 is not even a move. I do need, yes, to be a little bit careful with ideas like that. He's threatening checkmate in one, but I think he chosen the wrong moment. Maybe he didn't have a better moment, because now I can just play h6. This is so-called hope chess. He's hoping for me to promote this queen, because I'm like, oh my god, it's crazy, I can promote the queen, let me do that. And then he's, thank you very much, rook f8 is a checkmate in one. So it doesn't matter how great your move seems to be, always and always think about your opponent's opportunities, because that would be quite sad ending to this story. But now he has to come back to stop that a1 move, but now I can continue my idea with rook takes b4, and I'm threatening rook b1, check. By the way, maybe rook b1 is not immediately winning, he can still come back, but rather even more difficult for him to handle is this move, rook to b2. Yes, that's exactly what's gonna happen, and notice that this is a checkmate threat immediately, rook takes g2. The best strategy in chess to beat everyone under 2000 ELO is to create as many threats for your opponent as possible. Every single time, in the best case scenario, you improve your position, maybe one of your pieces or many of them, and at the same time you create a threat for your opponent. You put pressure so that he cannot think about his own ideas, he cannot be creative, he cannot create problems for you, but he has to handle all of those difficulties you create for himself. But I don't want you to play hope chess like this move rook f1 he played, because one move later he needed to go back, and this is the worst possible case scenario. When you need to go back and forth, you basically lose time, whereas I have improved my position there. Yes, now I can still take. What I want you to do is to make those multi-purpose moves where at the same time you improve your position, improve one of your pieces, and create a problem for your opponent. Okay, so rook h2, I don't see how he can handle it. The checkmate is coming. This is how powerful those two rooks are. Of course, he can still go away with his rook, at least not to blunder a checkmate. But then I'm gonna have a lot of pawns. Still, rooks and games are very tough, and you don't want to spoil it and make it draw. But I hope I'm gonna be able to handle it. At some point, I can just exchange a pair of rooks. But first, of course, I want to take advantage of those two rooks being on the second rank. Yes, he goes for that. Then I just take it with a check. Rook to king to g1. I think I give another check. And now I can play rook d2, threatening checkmate in one, and at the same time offering the queen's exchange. The rook's exchange. Why it's so great for me to exchange the rooks? Because with just one pair of rooks, I would have this idea of rook b2 and rook b1, exchanging the rooks and promoting my pawn. With two rooks, it's not possible because he's gonna take it twice. And because his king is cut, remember, it's always important to make sure that your opponent doesn't have enough counterplay, and the most important counterplay, and maybe the best one in the endgame, is to activate your king. But I don't allow my opponent to do that. And that is why this move, rook to b1, is an unstoppable threat that would force resignation. I hope. Maybe my opponent has different plans, but I can even pre-move this move rook to b1 because there is nothing stopping me from doing that. I have an entire course, 10-day opening mastery, that is based on this specific opening, all of the variations you need to handle so that you can forget about opening headache once and for all. Please take a look. The link is in the description. And in this playlist, you can see more games in the Philidor defense to beat everyone under 2000 ELO.